Good morning and welcome to In Search of Prosperity Sisterhood. I'm so glad you ladies are here this morning. This morning, I want to talk to you about what makes for good conversation. And as we've gone through different seasons and conversations within this sisterhood, I kind of reflected and thought, you know what, earlier this week, I have Miss Meredith with me. She might be telling you otherwise. Um, Throughout our sisterhood sessions, we have shared definitions. Sometimes it's something that even last week, I'm going to flip over to I've just got notes in front of me here. So last week we talked about conviction and vision and sharing kind of those definitions and how they coexist and things like that. The week before we talked about balance. And I had looked up a couple definitions online and then walked that through. Okay. So the idea of what is a definition, what defines you, and when you wrap that up with your beliefs, that can make for some pretty good conversation. Because the definition is something that everybody can know or find out, right? Whereas a belief is something that you hold, whereas really nobody else carries that. So, my question to you that we will have going into our discussion is share a word that you use a lot. Or maybe that's become a part of you, or your conversations or your scripts or whatever it is. Okay. What's a word you use that is part of your good conversation? So as you think about these things, feel free to throw them in the chat, grab those words, whatever it is. So let's keep that chat alive today. But going back to how definition and belief make for good conversation. If you know the definition of a word and its use, how is that different from the way what does it mean to you? So an example I have for you is the word of the year. It's a trend, right? It's been for a while. And honestly, I just hopped onto that train like 3 years ago. Okay. Maybe even just 2. And the word of the year, I've seen it all sorts of things. And I'm a Scorpio. I'm a creative person, and I go against the grain, if I could say that. So if I look up a definition and I don't like it, I'm going to look for another one, right? Until I find one that I like or can create one that I like from those, which is basically what the internet does, right? There's a million different answers for the question you put on, and you can find the answer you're looking for, right? And so when I create my word of the year, I am finding the definition that best suits me. So last week we talked about balance and what is balance, right? Just the definition, what Google says is balance versus what is balance to me? What is balance to you? Another word that strikes that conversation is success. What is success? Well, you can Google that. But what is success to you? Okay. What is it to you? Curious, are there other words that you have a specific definition for? That's kind of my question for our discussion. Is there a word that you use a lot that you have aligned to you through your own definition of that word? a word we use in the sisterhood in melding business and life together is the word scripts. And I like to use that word because it evokes all sorts of different responses from all sorts of different people. And it strikes up a really good conversation. It makes them maybe rethink their definition of what a script is. And that's what excites me about bringing up those words like script or balance or season or journey. I'm just thinking of like the words we've used in the last few weeks. And when we can create our own definitions for those things, that's really empowering. And so earlier this week, when we talked about conviction and finding conviction and vision and putting those two together so that no one else needs to really understand it because they're not you, and that's okay, right? And it's the same with any words that you use to describe yourself or the thing you're doing and why you're doing it. I've had some really cool conversations just saying, what does that mean to you? What does that word mean? Because to me, this is where I go with that thought, with that idea, with that word. What does it mean to you? I've had some really good conversations about generations and how they relate to each other. And I've also had some really good conversations, just trying to think, definitely around the word balance, especially with my one-to-one clients, just getting deeper in, or even in that workshop that we had last month, Conquering Your Calendar. Balance played a big part of that, and balance is different to every one of us, and especially how it looks on our calendar, right? A full work schedule to me is going to look different than it does to you, right? And how you look at mine, and versus how I look at yours, right? But that doesn't matter. It's how it works for you. And that's what I want you to remember, is that you have the power to create your own definitions. This year, my word of the year is amidst. And it came to me. I had gone to my other words of the year, but that word amidst really stuck out to me and then claimed itself as my word of the year. Well, when you look up the definition, it just means in the middle of. And no matter what angle you took it at, it just means in the middle of. And I also, in creating my word of the year and the idea of it and the fullness of it and the full perspective of it, I also looked at it from different tenses. So amidst is also amid or midst, right? Like they all mean the same thing. They're just in different context and tense or both, right? Mary's been snacking all morning. So, but then it was up to me to define what am I in the middle of? And it could be as simple for me, as simple as in the middle of abundance, in the middle of chaos and motherhood. Meredith is definitely amidst my business, right? Like, and that word just keeps coming up for me. And so by focusing on it, I'm using it more in conversation. And it's striking up other conversations. And so I'm curious, as we go into discussion, this is where I'm going to leave you with changing the question you ask yourself, what is success, or fill in the blank, what is, to what is that to me? And answering that question, journaling about it. Because when you combine belief and definition, you can have a really cool conversation with yourself, and you can have a really cool conversations with ladies that are in this room or in any other room you come across. So with that, as we go into our discussion, the question for our discussion is, if you have a word, share it. What's that word? Maybe it's just a word that got stuck in your head right before you went to bed last night. But I'm curious. And then in the spirit of positive peer pressure, we might ask you, what does that mean? Right? What do you think it means? And I'm looking forward to this really good conversation. So thanks again, ladies, and I will see you in our discussion.